Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Of course, a lot going on. A lot of it's legal, which, of course, is in my zone. Constitutional, which is right in the middle of my zone. The question is, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to cover a lot this evening, the question is whether the appointment of Jack Smith as a special counsel is constitutional. That is an argument that is going to be heard by Judge Aileen Cannon in a Florida Supreme Court, Fort Pierce Courthouse. Now, she's got the plaintiff's brief, and she's got the government's brief. And a few other briefs. Let me read you the coverage from the Washington Examiner. Kaylin Deese. Federal judge presiding over the former President Trump Florida classified documents case will allow scholars to participate in oral arguments for and against the constitutionality of Jack Smith's appointment as special counsel. Now, she's being criticized for this, but this, again, is a case of first impression involving the Constitution of the United States in the middle of an election. Jack Smith has put the judge in this position. The government, Merrick Garland, the Biden administration has put the judge in this position. Judge Chunk and I firmly believe would have just shut it all down and been done with it and sent it up to appeal or whatever. U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon said in an order Tuesday that she will allow 30 minutes for each legal scholar to present their arguments at a June 21 hearing about why Smith may or may not have been legally appointed by the Department of Justice. The hearing is part of Trump's broader effort to dismiss the 40-count indictment accusing him of willful retention of classified records and efforts to obstruct the federal government's retrieval. In other words, President Trump's lawyers made the filing, they have the standing, that this appointment was unconstitutional. The government responds and says that no, it was constitutional. And then people who have some knowledge in this field can file amici or friend of the court briefs if both parties agree. And the judges looked at those apparently and said, you know what, we have some brilliant people here. We can certainly see what they have to say about the subject. They have filed the briefs, and I have some questions for them. Now, experts arguing in favor of and against Trump's position include South Texas College of Law professor Josh Blackman, Attorney Gene Shearer, former clerk to Justice Antonin Scalia, and Matthew Seligman, an attorney representing an anti-Trump coalition of constitutional attorneys and former ranking government officials. Cannon previously allowed the experts to file amicus or friend of the court briefs for and against Trump's motions to dismiss. In May, she allowed non-parties to the case to request access to participate in oral argument at the hearing so long as they made requests by Monday. Josh Blackman, South Texas College law professor, also an expert on this subject, will represent Landmark Legal Foundation. I've told you Landmark was involved in this. I am the chairman of the board of Landmark Legal Foundation. Now, that said, I don't make these decisions on specific cases. But as I've explained over the decades, Landmark Legal Foundation, this is what we do. So one of the three oral arguments, 30 minutes each, is assigned to Landmark's lawyer, professor. There are actually several. An additional expert. Blackman will represent Landmark Legal Foundation, a law professor, Seth Barrett Tillman, who's absolutely brilliant, if not the number one expert in the world on this issue, to argue Smith is not an officer of the United States, but rather the employee whose appointment is inconsistent with the separation of powers and political accountability. Right. Scheer will provide the argument that the special counsel is a principal officer whose appointment by Garland should require a Senate confirmation. That's correct. Smith does not have authority to prosecute this case, according to this brief. And who does he represent? Citizens United and two former attorneys general. Edwin Meese, attorney general during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. Michael Mukasey, attorney general during the presidency of George W. Bush. Seligman will be the one dissenting voice arguing in favor of Smith, contending that his appointment Congress may vest in the Attorney General, and who still answers to him may be removed by Garland despite his independent role. Some prominent legal minds are behind the argument, the usual. Philip LaCavara, Watergate era prosecutor. Lawrence Tribe will sign anything against Trump. George Conway, who is, in my view, a complete buffoon at this point. A complete buffoon at this point. And it goes on. Cannon's order came on the same day Garland testified to the House Judiciary Committee as Republicans grilled him about what they see as the weaponization of justice against Trump as he faces 4 criminal indictments while seeking re-election. Representative Thomas Massey pressed Garland directly about Smith's appointment to oversee the classified documents case. What gives you the authority to appoint a special counsel to create? You've created an office in the U.S. government that does not exist without authorization from Congress, Massey said. Garland argued that special counsel appointments that he and other attorneys general, including former Attorney General William Barr, have made, cite a regulation that points to a statute. But Massey pushed back on the Attorney General, saying even if it did not require an act of Congress to appoint Smith, you've already admitted that there was no act of Congress and so forth. The actual answer is William Barr appointed a sitting United States attorney who had already gone through the Senate confirmation process and was approved. So the delegation authority from the Attorney General to a sitting United States attorney who already was approved by Congress, by the Senate, is different than picking somebody out of The Hague who hasn't been approved for anything. And this is one of the points that we argue in the Landmark Legal Foundation brief. As I said, I didn't write the brief. Our lawyers, 2 professors were involved. I'm the chairman of the board, and I'm thrilled that they've done what they've done. And we're going to have the attorney arguing on behalf of Landmark on the program in a little over an hour. And I've actually never spoken to him. But we'll speak to him together because he's a high-quality talent, Josh Blackman. He's not a TV lawyer and that sort of thing, although there's nothing wrong with him, but he's actually litigating this case on behalf of Landmark, and he will make one of 3 an oral argument presentation. Now, interestingly, I have no connection to the other argument, the other case that was filed. Again, friend of the court, accepted by the judge, by the former attorneys general. But one of the former attorneys general, Edwin Meese, of course, I was chief of staff to him. So just so you understand, when I make these arguments, whether it is seeking a common law writ, perhaps a writ of habeas corpus, to get around all this unconstitutional conduct by the judicial system in New York, I make this argument from a position of knowledge and experience. My knowledge and experience is different than your average former federal prosecutor or your superior former federal prosecutor or some other individuals who don't do this sort of thing. We do. And in many cases, we've succeeded. We have no idea, obviously, what Judge Cannon will do, but she's under attack. She's under attack by the same people who believe what happened in Manhattan was a quintessentially perfect constitutional case by a judge that they have a man love for, when in fact it was a Stalinist star chamber in every respect. Every respect. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, folks, China, Russia, Iran, they're all on the move. Right here in the U.S., you've got inflation, you have open borders, and, of course, an election year. Oh, and we just crossed over $34 trillion in debt with no signs of slowing down. It's time to wake up, folks. There's a lot at risk, possibly even your retirement account. The time to protect yourself is before a crisis, not after. Advantage Gold, the gold and silver company I recommend to help Americans, well, they'll help you prepare now for times just like these. Call them at 800-900-8000 today. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold today. Here's the number, 800-900-8000. Plus, see if you qualify to get your special discount worth up to $1,300 today, 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. If you want to read Landmark Legal Foundation's brief in the case in Florida on the Appointments Clause violation by the Attorney General of the United States, Meritless Garland, you can go to the landmarklegalfoundation.org website. It's right there. Mr. Producer, if you will link to it, and you can check it out, landmarklegalfoundation.org. You know, I've been there for decades, and now I'm the chairman. We have a fantastic president, fantastic staff, Pete Hutchison, Mike O'Neill, Matt Forays, and others, and they get little notice. But they are absolutely a fantastic group of serious constitutionalists. We don't just take risks for risk's sake. We work things through and we make a decision. That's why it's very annoying when some of these other lawyers say, well, I don't know about that. You don't know about anything. honestly. So you can check out their brief, and also you can check out, I don't know where you go, but it's very easy to find it, I'm sure, the brief that was filed on behalf of the former attorneys general, Meese and McCasey. And then in Georgia, honest to God, folks, I thought I brought this up yesterday. So there was some kind of article out when I was on the air last night. But I guess it's been formalized, or it's just now getting out. The Associated Press, appeals court halts Trump's Georgia election case while appeal on Willis disqualification is pending. See, these are real judges. These are cases of first impression that have an enormous impact on our country. And while the Chunkin judges and the Pond judges and the Mershon, who's really barely a judge, an acting state judge, well, these guys are in a rush. While the Democrat prosecutors are in a rush, the Soros prosecutors, the Biden prosecutors, while they're in a rush, they want to get this done. They want to dirty up Trump. And, of course, the George Stephanopoulos, the Bill Clinton host on ABC News, I don't see any connection, because you're an idiot. You're a buffoon. Everybody sees it. They just don't admit to it. Okay, that's their problem. We don't have to go along with the scam. In any event, there you have it. You have some judges who are saying, well, let's slow this down, boys. We need to take a look. These issues are very important. Immunity, the appointments clause. Look at all the constitutional attacks from these prosecutors. We've never seen anything like it. It's like a mob of prosecutors charging the National Archives to destroy the Constitution. We have due process and equal protection violations in New York of the federal Constitution. We have reverse federalism, that is nullification, that's taking place by a Soros prosecutor and a Biden judge. And they're now in this muck of an appeals process. And there's article after article coming out. What might this judge do to Trump? Will he prevent him from campaigning? Will he do this? Will he do that? That's the problem. This is an ongoing violation. Then we have in Georgia, we have a prosecutor who was sleeping with the special lawyer that she appointed, taking trips, only using cash, of course. She says that's what all black people do. No, that's what the mob does. I don't know about all black people. But apparently she represents all black people in the use of cash. How do I know? She said so, of course. And serious questions about her ethics and what she's done, including contacts with the White House through her lover. That's never been fully explored. Then we have Jack Smith, regardless of any court, decides. Mark decides for Mark, who clearly was unconstitutionally appointed. Unconstitutionally. They picked him because he's a hitman. They brought him in from The Hague. They said, sick him. And that's what he did. And that's what he does. So we see what's going on, but the appeals court has halted the trial in Georgia. They said, look, there is a serious question whether or not Fani Willis is disqualified or not, and we're going to take a look at this. So that one's on hold. We'll be right back. You know, folks, we've got an awful lot swirling around this country, both internally and externally. We've got wars going on in all parts of the world. We've got riots effectively going on in our colleges and universities. We have inflation through the roof. It's an election year to boot. All these problems are often huge tailwinds for gold, which is why gold is at all-time highs, looking like it's going to go higher. And when it comes to gold, I only trust my friends at Advantage Gold. They help Americans just like you protect your retirement accounts and help safeguard spread your wealth through diversification. So call them right now. 800-900-8000. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit plus a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. See if you qualify to get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 today. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Liberty's voice, Mark Levin. Talk with that voice now. 877-381-3811.
Funny how Biden, his party, and his media never mentioned that the House GOP sent a real tough immigration bill to the Senate, H.R. 2, which Schumer killed at the direction of Biden. Are the Republicans, are their mouths broken? I don't understand. Do they know how to speak and explain things? Apparently not. Biden signed over 90 executive orders to eviscerate our immigration laws. Biden's new executive order allows at least nearly 2 million illegal aliens into this country every year. Biden is flying foreigners into our country and immediately putting them on a path to citizenship. As for the so-called bipartisan bill, a handful of Senate Republicans negotiating in secret with the Democrats and then dropping a horrendous pro-illegal immigration bill on the rest of the Republicans is a shameless and deceitful excuse for which we can thank Mitch McConnell, who wound up voting against it. The great legislator, the great strategist. He gave the Democrats the talking points. The Democrats just lie. That's all they do. That's all they do. It's like this executive order he signs to strengthen the border. Secure the border, they say, after they spent a year saying that the border is secure. We can't do anything by executive order after he used 94 executive orders to destroy existing immigration law. As I said last night, all you need is one executive order repealing all of his executive orders and then making a statement that henceforth existing immigration law will be enforced. You need a law to say you're going to enforce the law? No, that doesn't work that way. That's not how it works. Now, committee chairman in the House, Republicans, sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, which means it'll die. That's how bad this is. That's how bad the legal system is in Washington, D.C. and in America now. You actually had people who lied under oath. You have their testimony. You have it recorded. You have it transcribed. Lied under oath. And it'll be a dead letter over there at the U.S. Department of Justice. Because it's Hunter Biden and James Biden. Part of the Biden inbred family. Is there an honest Biden on the face of the earth? Just one? If so, who is it? Who is it over the age of 18? Hunter lied about his role, they say, in the Biden family holding company. Now that's black or white. It either is or it isn't. And James, the stupid brother, if you can imagine that, a stupid brother to Joe Biden, he's got to be really stupid. He said he was not in a meeting with his brother when he was in a meeting with his brother. All of this is intended to cover for Joe Biden. He's the head mobster. He's the Kliegel, if you will. And so there we have real crimes. Doesn't matter. Peter Navarro's sitting in prison. They want to put Bannon in prison. They wanted to put Stone in prison. They put Manafort in prison in solitary confinement. Wow. You've got Democrat attorneys general all over the country going after patriotic American citizens who dared to challenge the last election. Nobody knows what the law is anymore. All we know is that Republican candidates, Republican activists are being targeted. And by the way, they're eviscerating Republican and conservative lawyers who've been involved in representing in these various cases, stripping them of their law degrees. or suspending them. Not like they were representing mass murderers, not like they were representing terrorists, not like they were representing people who want to overthrow the country, not like they were representing, Black Lives Matter or Antifa or what. No. They dared to make the argument about ballots, about drop boxes. They dared to make the argument about their interpretation of the Constitution. Wow. Well, they gotta lose their law license. Mershon won't lose his law license. Bragg won't lose his law license. Letitia James won't lose her law license, despite the fact those two prosecutors campaigned to get Trump. That should have been the end of them. And despite the fact that Mershon is the most corrupt, conflicted, acting state judge in America. That's okay. Despite the fact they breathe life out of the corpse of this guy Smith, who they bring back from The Hague, who I think he was probably deported to The Hague, not literally, but effectively, given how he's destroyed the lives and the careers of so many people, given how he gave the nod to go after the Tea Party when he was asked by the IRS, given how he tried to take out the governor of Virginia and eventually did. Robert McDonnell, and I can go down the list. Hell, he went after even John Edwards, but John Edwards was never liked by the Democratic establishment. So they bring this thug, this low IQ, vile, vicious, knuckle-dragging thug into Washington, D.C., and they appoint him purposely because they know he's a low IQ, knuckle-dragging, thug. And Garland also knew that he could never get him approved by the Senate, so he bypassed that process. He could have picked one of 93 U.S. attorneys. He could have picked any of the top brass at the Department of Justice who had already been confirmed by the Senate, but he chose not to. Just as a common sense matter circling back, have you ever seen a prosecutor with this kind of power? Very few have this kind of power. Very few. It's amazing. They passed the independent counsel statute back in the 70s. Memory serves, I think it was 1978. They literally had to pass a statute passed by Congress. Literally had to pass a statute passed by Congress to empower the Attorney General to make request of a court to make these appointments. A special division court, they called it. Special division court under the independent counsel statute. They had to look at the Constitution. They had to make these decisions, but they still violated the Constitution. Nonetheless, the Supreme Court voted. The Supreme Court upheld it. The Supreme Court upheld it in the Olson case. Only one justice said no, Antonin Scalia. No, they have to go through the Appointments Clause process, and this is like setting up a separate government over here with no accountability, and you're mixing the powers of the branches. Prosecutors who appoint the judges, who are appointed by or responsible by judges? No. But he was right. That's why even if you're a patriot of one, you can be right, you know. They don't even go through the motions with this guy Smith. No statutory authority. They have to twist the Department of Justice regulatory process for making an appointment in order to give it to this guy. Now they go into court and they act like this is offensive. What? What? You're going to challenge the legitimacy of the special counsel? Yeah, I think we are. Always think back to the framers of the Constitution. Do you think for a minute, of course, there was no Department of Justice, U.S. attorneys, none of it. But do you think for a minute they would have thought it was okay for a cabinet official to pick an individual who he does not subject to the confirmation process of the Senate, to have such enormous authority and power to interfere in an election, to issue search warrant or to seek search warrants against a former president? A SWAT team? What do you think they would have thought of that? What do you think they would have thought of one candidate for president unleashing the full authority and power of the federal government against another candidate through the operation of an individual who's only overseen by the candidate, who never went through the Senate process? Why do we have a Senate confirmation process? Anybody know? It's in it's in Madison's notes. Why? Because the fear was the presidency would become too powerful. So they wanted a role for Congress. They decided that the House would be a little too unruly. They're directly elected, so they chose the Senate. The Senate, which would be selected by the state legislature. Now, state legislatures can vote to pick their senator in other ways. A few of them did, even by popular vote, but not till the 17th Amendment, where they all picked by popular vote, through another populism, quote-unquote, progressive era in America. But that aside, the point is this. They wanted another branch of government to have a role in the appointment of the most powerful individuals in the executive branch. They wanted the Senate to have some role in the selection of what would become cabinet officers. And so the argument that the Biden regime is making in court is, no, wait a minute. This is an officer, a presidential officer, because he was selected by Garland. Oh, I see. So Garland can now approve presidential officers without going through the appointments clause. Where is that written? Where did that come from? You don't take actions and then try and figure out how to constitutionalize them, if you will. On what basis was Jack Smith appointed, provided with this enormous power? On what basis? Statutory basis? No. Constitutional basis? No. Was there an alternative? Of course there was an alternative. Pick a U.S. attorney, pick the Associate Attorney General of the United States, pick the head of the criminal division, all of whom have been confirmed by the Senate. So when you have an avenue to do it constitutionally, why do you pick a different avenue? So now we should change the Constitution and the Appointments Clause to accommodate the Biden regime, the mob attorney general, and the clown prosecutor? We should somehow fix it. Where does this end? What if Donald Trump wanted to appoint me as a special counsel, Mr. Producer? No, I'm not. I'm just giving it as an example to freak out the left. If the Biden regime, if their mob attorney general and their rogue prosecutors succeed, what's to stop, let's say, Donald Trump as president, from appointing Mark Levin as a special counsel to investigate the Biden crime family? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero. And there's not a damn thing Congress can do about it. Well, honestly, the framers did not intend that. They intended the opposite. Otherwise, why have an appointments clause? In fact, I look at it this way. You have a man in Jack Smith who has more power than any U.S. attorney in the country, because he's investigating a presidential candidate, a former president, and the influence in our electoral system is obvious. It's obvious to everybody and anybody. That's why the left is cheering it on. That's why some of us are saying, what the hell's going on here with this lawfare? So you actually have a prosecutor who has more power, focuses all of his resources and unlimited resources, personnel and funding of the government on one person. One person. Now, there's collateral damage with this guy. No, but he's focused on Trump. And he was never, ever confirmed by the United States Senate. He just walked in. Attorney General said, here, I'm giving you all these powers. So their argument, well, it's delegation authority. No, not so fast. Then why send any U.S. attorney? Any would-be U.S. attorney. Why would you require any nomination for the U.S. attorney's position to be sent to the Senate under the Appointments Clause? Why would you do that? When you have Jack Smith out there as a perfect example. Well, he doesn't have a broad-based, agenda here where he can do this. That's exactly the point. You're picking somebody to focus on investigating basically one person. There needs to be a check on that process. Here's the other problem. Ready for this, Mr. Producer? Footnote? I'll tell you the other problem. I got to take a hard break. There's another big problem with their argument. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
All over the world, our enemies are on the move. And in our own country, same thing. Things are tough between rising prices, election issues, a $34 trillion debt. But folks, there is good news. If you're smart, you can use these problems to your advantage. By making the right choices right now, you can keep your retirement money safe and even make more money in this climate. That's where Advantage Gold comes in. They're experts in helping Americans protect their savings with gold and silver. It's called diversification. Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000. They'll send you a free 2024 gold and silver kit that tells you how to keep your money safe when things are bad. Tell them I sent you, and you may qualify for a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000. See if you qualify for that special discount worth up to $1,300. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals. Where I live in Virginia, or we do in Leesburg, we're right on the Airstream line. So the Airstream can move slightly east, slightly west, and that determines the weather here. So during the break, my iPhone is buzzing, and Mr. Producer says, what's that? And I looked at it. We have a tornado warning. I would tell the people in the WMAL listening area, we have a tornado warning, and they're telling you to go to the lower floors of your home. So let me recommend, because I hear the thunder. You hear it, Mr. Producer? That people who can hear me in the WMAL listening area, I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm just telling you there is a tornado warning. Now, it's very difficult to warn about tornadoes with a degree of accuracy, but they've reached a point where they can see the movement of certain forces out there, which suggests it's very possible. I didn't say probable, but possible. So there you go. But I will continue here, Mr. Producer, holding down the fort. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. We're always ahead of the mob, or the crowd, if you will. Our number is 877-381-3811. Hello, 877-381-3811. I can't go through everything I discussed already because of being, number one, repetitious by definition, and number two, I don't have time. So, one of the other problems with this kind of appointment of Jack Smith, outside the Appointments Clause, you're not only violating the purpose of the Appointments Clause, but you are attacking separation of powers. That is, the executive branch is conducting itself without the oversight that was intended by the framers of the Constitution. I'll give you an example. The Impeachment Clause. Article 2, Section 4. It says, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, they weren't exactly clear what they meant beyond President and Vice President, because they didn't create all these cabinet positions in the Constitution. But it's been interpreted to mean, and so that's important, our tradition and history, it's been interpreted to mean, senior officials, judges. It's been interpreted to mean people who've been presidential appointees confirmed by the Senate. So at least within the zone, you should be able to impeach a U.S. attorney. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but I don't see why it couldn't. But is everybody who works for the federal government a civil officer for the purposes of the Impeachment Clause? No. No. You have Joseph Story, brilliant Associate Justice, who wrote on the law, in many ways was considered one of the great interpreters of the Constitution. In his commentaries on the Constitution of the United States, he argued that the language of the Constitution may create some doubt whether disqualification could be pronounced without being coupled with a removal from office, and they get into the particulars of the Impeachment Clause. Here's the problem. Because of the way Jack Smith was appointed, I don't think you can make a good argument that he can be impeached. If Jack Smith had been a confirmed U.S. attorney, I think you could make a strong argument that he could be impeached. But can you impeach an employee of the Justice Department? Now, the government argues, in this case, he's not an employee. He's an officer. But just saying the person's an officer doesn't make it so. Again, then why have confirmation processes? Well, we have statutes for that. Exactly. Not only is there no statute supporting this, but it's a very strange animal in a republic. A very strange. Well, you can impeach the attorney general. So what? That does not get to the prosecutor. So there's really no oversight over Jack Smith. Now, who's Jack Smith? Jack Smith is now the most powerful prosecutor in the United States. More powerful than any U.S. attorney. More powerful than any U.S. attorney. Well, what makes him that? The Attorney General. Well, he doesn't have the authority to do that. That's right. Jack Smith is now the most powerful prosecutor in the United States of America. He's affecting the election system. He's affecting the constitutional system. He's affecting the court system. He's got unlimited resources, unlimited access to government personnel. The Attorney General says, yes, I oversee it, but he's independent. He's independent? Well, yes, he brings decisions to me, but he's basically independent. So you have an independent, largely independent individual, more powerful than any prosecutor that has been confirmed by the United States Senate, and they tell us it's not a big deal. In my view, not subject to the impeachment clause, not because I don't want him to be, but because he's not, in all likelihood. In all likelihood, he's not. He's not a presidential appointee. And just because the Attorney General says, I delegate upon you, Jack Smith, all this power, all these resources, all these personnel, and they cut out the United States Senate. Why have an appointments clause? Obviously, it's there for a reason. So that this kind of power can't be exercised by one or two people, the president and the attorney general, under cover of, well, he was delegated this authority. So what? He didn't have the power to delegate. That is Merrick Garland. We're not talking about a clerk. We're not talking about, first of all, you couldn't delegate it to a clerk either, as I think this through. But we will have one of the experts on this who is arguing the Landmark Legal Foundation case as a friend of the court, Jack Blackman, on, and after the break that we take, a law professor, South Texas College, who's an expert on this, and he's also arguing for Landmark Legal, and another expert, really probably the expert in the entire country, entire world, on the Appointments Clause, another professor, and a former clerk to Antonin Scalia, Gene Shar, will be arguing the case in the brief that was filed by former Attorneys General Meese and Mukasey. Jack Smith is burning up every traditional understanding of the Constitution. He is triggering parts of the Constitution that now have to be resolved, where basically you leave them alone. Like this issue of immunity. He created that. Issue of the Espionage Act being applied for the first time against a former president of the United States. He created that. This appointment by Garland outside the Appointments Clause, they created that. They've created all these constitutional confrontations and issues, which you try to avoid. In other words, when you're a senior public official, an attorney general of the United States, or when you're a prosecutor, you try and avoid these issues because it's not good for the country to keep setting parts of the Constitution on fire. And for 200 years, more than 200 years, since we've had a president of the United States, we've never had these issues. Immunity after you leave office for actions that you took as president. We only have it because they indicted Trump for January 6th. Whether the Espionage Act applies to a president, I say no way. But it's never been tried before. Okay, but now he's being prosecuted for obstruction and other stuff involving the Espionage Act. Using the Enron obstruction statute that doesn't even apply. So the Supreme Court now has to address that. And this issue of whether or not Jack Smith, his appointment violated the Appointments Clause. There's another provision of the Constitution that's being fought now. All because they want to put Trump in prison. And just in case, we got our boys in New York. They'll take care of business. No due process. John Eastman has come out. John Eastman is a brilliant lawyer. Just because in California they take away his law license doesn't change the fact. And one day, unfortunately for him in the history books, when he's gone, he will be viewed as another victim of what's taking place in this country because he didn't do anything in any way that merits the kind of treatment that he received. But he also says the president should use the writ of habeas corpus as a direct appeal to the Supreme Court. That is what we talked about, Arthur Ferguson and I, as one of the common law writs. You have prohibition, you have mandamus, you have separate habeas corpus. I'd try them all, but that's fine by me. That's fine by me. People who have lived in this, who have worked in this, who understand this, are starting to rally to the point. People who have never worked in this, never experienced this, have practiced other forms. It's like going to a chef at a Chinese restaurant and demanding that they make you the best Italian meal in history. Or going to a chef in an Italian restaurant and say, hey, we want the best kosher meal that's ever been created. In other words, they're a chef they can give it a shot, but that's not their expertise. Right? Right. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to introduce somebody I've not met yet, but we'll meet them together right now. And that is the lawyer who will be arguing one of the oral argument, for the fact that Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed. And that would be Josh Blackman. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, Josh Blackman, tell everybody what the basic points are in the brief and what you want to try and get across to the judge.
The simple fact is that Merrick Garland decided not to prosecute Donald Trump through a politically accountable federal prosecutor, someone who was appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Instead, he picked Jack Smith, who was a lawyer in The Hague prosecuting international crimes. The problem is that Jack Smith, in his current form, can't exercise his broad, unchecked prosecutorial powers for a couple reasons. One, the position he has is basically temporary. He was created for the sole purpose of prosecuting Donald Trump, and then once that's over, he disappears. And there's long-standing case law saying that you can't do that, that when you have these broad powers, it has to be a permanent position. It can't be a temporary position. Another problem is that there's one of political accountability. Jack Smith has a lot of power and a lot of independence, and he's not accountable to the Senate. He's not accountable to the president, and there's layers of what's called insulation that protects him. There's another problem, how it's funded. Believe it or not, Jack Smith has this huge budget, which Congress never really approved. Congress approved money for an old type of a special prosecutor that no longer exists, but never approved money for this one. So there's arguments that this is unconstitutional from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to have in a couple of weeks, Judge Cannon's going to have basically, I think, a full day of argument hearing all of these points out about whether this prosecution can go forward. If Smith is not valid, this prosecution very well may end immediately. It stops.
Let me ask you a question, Professor. Is there a more powerful prosecutor in the entire country of the United States with a national impact like this prosecutor? Can you think of a single U.S. attorney who has to be confirmed by the Senate, who has the kind of power to influence the nation? And look, the fact is that he's triggered all these constitutional provisions, the Appointments Clause, arguments about post-presidential immunity, and on and on and on. Whether the Espionage Act applies to a president, he's triggered all these issues. He's got enormous power. Can you think of another prosecutor who has this kind of power?
No, I can't. Justice Scalia, decades ago, recognized the problem when you let one person be appointed to investigate a single person, not representing the nation as a whole, but targeting one person, and his name is Donald Trump. And it's like Inspector Javert from Les Mis, if I can use the Broadway reference. When you have one person in the bullseye and you have virtually unlimited powers, nothing's going to stop you. And I think that's why Garland selected Smith to go after Trump. And really the political accountability is simply absent. Garland can say, oh, it's not me. I didn't do anything. This is Jack Smith. But once you appoint this person, they can basically run amok and go as far as they wish.
There's no political check on the way in because of the appointments clause. And really, I would argue the impeachment clause doesn't apply to him either. The impeachment clause has never reached down to an employee. I mean, it might apply to a U.S. attorney. So they avoid the appointments clause. They avoid the one check that Congress has on the way in, and they avoid the check that Congress might exercise in order to move them out, correct?
You're absolutely right. We argue in the brief, which is on behalf of Professor Tillman and the Landmark Legal Foundation, we argue that Jack Smith is not an officer at all. He's an employee. And under the Constitution, only officers can be impeached. So I don't even think the Senate could, House could even impeach the guy if they wanted to. He's not really an officer at all. He's sort of exercising this power in this limbo zone where he's neither here nor there.
So on the way in, the Senate had no role. So what's the point of the appointments clause? That's number one. Number two, we know what the point was. The framers wanted the Senate to have a role in this. So the presidency isn't all this powerful, number one. Number two, they have no control over his budget because his budget's amorphous, as you just pointed out. It's part of the Department of Justice. So what do? They don't even know where to attack it. Number three, they can't remove him because the impeachment clause doesn't apply to him. Certainly, if they argue the government does, that he's an officer, and it does, but that would be an issue that's unresolved at best. So in other words, This creation is not so aconstitutional, I would argue, that when you have a guy like this who's focused simply on a former president who's running for president, you got to make sure you check all the boxes, right?
Exactly right. And just to think about it, why does the special counsel exist? It exists for a conflict of interest. So, for example, when the administration investigates its own people, the Reagan administration wants to investigate Ted Olson, right? Someone in its own administration. You say, okay, there's a conflict. But there's no conflict here. Trump doesn't work for Biden. This isn't like investigating Hunter Biden. They did this to shield themselves from scrutiny. They're saying, oh, you're not putting your opponent in jail. It's this guy, Jack Smith. It's not me. And it really inverts the entire system of government when you have this separation between the executive branch and the people who are throwing the leading candidate on the Republican ticket in jail.
That's right. You're right on. And the fact that this judge is willing to accept these briefs and hear arguments, it's funny that she comes under attack, that there's something unusual about her. These would be the same voices out there, I call them the TV lawyers, who defend Marchand on CNN and MSNBC despite his assault on due process and equal protection. We should ignore most of those people, well, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I don't listen to them. I don't watch that stuff.
Are you ready for your case?
We found out yesterday we're getting argument time. I have 2 weeks to get ready. I will be ready, sir.
You're going to be great. We'll be rooting for you, and when you're all done, we're going to bring you back if that's okay.
Thank you.
All right, take care of yourself, my friend. That is South Texas College of Law Professor Josh Blackman, who is superb. We'll be right back. Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need.
This is the show the New York Times is afraid of. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
we've got the same 2 or 3 former lieutenant colonels and their ilk, isolationists, basically, that are used to advance what was one thought as a sort of Bernie Sanders left-wing idea of foreign policy, but there seems to have been a meeting of the Marxist populists and the isolationist populists. They've all come to the same agreement that we are warmongers. And Joe Biden feeds into this because these so-called forever wars are led by people like Joe Biden. He will not let Israel win, that Israel's defying him. He gives lots of money to Ukraine, but Ukraine is not allowed to actually attack the enemy. And these populist isolationists and the Marxist isolationists agree on that. Agree on that. So the outcome's the same. Well, we don't support Russia. Yes, you do. Ukraine is losing because they haven't been able to get the kind of equipment and use it to literally attack the Russian tanks as they line up 30 miles deep into Russia, or their armaments depots. They know where they are. They're not allowed to attack those. Israel is trying to take out the leadership in Hamas. Their hands are being tied, but they're pushing forward nonetheless. And by the way, Biden is now using the United Nations to support the Hamas peace agreement, which now Hamas won't even support. And why should they? Because Biden is their special pleader, and he's funding them through Iran and the UN. This insanity that is in between Joe Biden's head is projected all over the place, whether it's the border, whether it's inflation and interest rates, whether it's our energy. I cannot believe there's even 48%, 47%. I can't believe there's 20% of the people in this country that thinks this is okay. And think it's okay to import Palestinians out of Gaza into the United States. That think it's okay to bankrupt the United States, destroy the value of the dollar, your money, while jacking up prices. I can't believe there's 20% of the American people who have no problem with getting rid of their automobiles and replacing them with electric vehicles where there's no real place to plug in. The inconvenience of it all, the insanity of it all. And I could go on and on and on. On and on and on. It's shocking to me. You know, this border crisis didn't exist when Trump left office. And as I say, I say Joe Biden is the arsonist who then shows up at the fire with a water pistol. Everything Joe Biden does right now is intended to get him reelected. So they run commercials saying that the Republicans opposed bipartisan legislation and Joe Biden stepped in with his executive orders. Mitch McConnell did that. The Wall Street Journal editorial page did that. The establishment Republican reporters in Washington, D.C. did that. H.R. 2 was presented to the Senate. That was a real tough immigration bill. Schumer killed it at the direction of Biden. There was legislation that was proposed. They killed it. So here we are 5-6 months before the general election, and he comes out with an executive order. And that executive order enshrines up to 2 million or more illegal aliens every year coming into America. What do you think of that, folks? But he knows he has the cover of America's Al Jazeera. That is America's media. He has the cover of America's Al Jazeera. They will lie for him. They will spin for him. They will celebrate him. Look what's happening on the Morning Schmo show. Seriously. They know that he's an imbecile. And yet they attack Politico, which is a left-wing news site, for daring to report that people who meet with Biden, many of them, think he's an imbecile. They're not serving the country. They are state-run media, Democrat Party media. They are Al Jazeera media. That's the new name I'm going to give, Mr. Producer. What do you think of that? America's Al Jazeera media. There it is. On MSLSD, on the Constipated News Network, in the pages of the Stalin-supporting, Holocaust-denying, Castro-installing New York Slimes, or the Washington Compost, where if you don't get it, good for you. Which is imploding. If it didn't have this multi-billionaire funding it, it would have closed down already. Gee, would that have hurt the country? Well, anytime a news organization... No, that's not true. It's a propaganda outfit. It's Al Jazeera on the Potomac. That's what it is. A real reporter on the border, Bill Malugin on Fox News. This guy's unbelievable. This guy deserves whatever journalist awards are available to give him. He is a real journalist. He's the kind of journalist we used to have. Not anymore. Handful. And almost all of them work at Fox and The Blaze and other conservative outlets. But that's it. Here's Bill Malugin on Fox at Jacumba, California. Anybody heard of a Jacumba, California that doesn't live within 100 miles of it? Of course not. But it's now a haven for illegal aliens. Cut 4, go.
What makes this San Diego sector where we are so unique is we almost never see any Mexicans or Central Americans crossing illegally out here. It's always people coming from the other side of the world. Case in point, take a look at this video we shot last night. We were out here as President Biden's executive order was taking effect around sunset local time. Came across this group of predominantly Chinese and Vietnamese nationals being arrested by Border Patrol.
Well, they're here, to quote the late John McCain, to pick lettuce. There's no question about that, is there, Mr. Producer? No question about it at all. Go ahead.
They were simply processed as this executive order was taking effect. It's been business as usual out here. Haven't really seen any big change one way or the other.
And I'm sure the Morning Schmo has a reporter down there. I'm sure Rachel Madcow has a reporter down there. And all the miscreants and malcontents in between. Joy Reid, oh yeah, I'm sure she's down there cheering them on. Come on in. Come on in. Gotta kill this society. It was started by white supremacists and Klansmen. Come on. And yet, look what it's doing to neighborhoods of color, as we say. It's ruining them. It's destroying them. That's why people are turning out in Chicago and New York and Philadelphia and elsewhere. These people are all over the country, but they're congregating in the inner cities. And they're congregating in minority neighborhoods, black and Hispanic neighborhoods. Nobody ever tells you that. I will tell you that. And that's why these city councils in these large Democrat cities are being addressed, confronted by the citizens who are saying, wait a minute, I don't get a free credit card. Wait a minute, nobody puts me up in a 4 or 5-star hotel. Wait a minute. My kids can't go out on the ball field. There's tents over there. Wait a minute. Our schools are overcrowded. Wait a minute. That's right. Wait a minute. That's Joe Biden's America. Which isn't America, actually. It's everywhere but America. Go ahead.
Earlier in the afternoon. Take a look at this video, Harris. This was a bunch of guys from the Middle East crossing illegally in a much bigger group. Several of them.
More to come. More to come. We're going to fly them in from Gaza. I mean, after all, what's the problem? Islamophobia? Is there something wrong with you? Must be. Well, we saw what took place between the Marxists and the Islamists. That is, the Hitler Youth. No. That's you. You're a bigot. The Jews are genocidal maniacs. America is a colonialist, imperialist society. It's illegitimate. This is the future. Don't you understand? And Joe Biden has flown into this country almost 500,000 foreigners. Illegally. Puts them on a track to citizenship. a fast track to citizenship. We all know what's going on here. The Democrat Party's conquering America. Let's be honest. And we have a bunch of morons who vote for them nonetheless. That's okay. I mean, Trump's dangerous. These guys are practicing what they're preaching against Trump, practicing it right in front of our damn eyes. We've never seen a court system like this. We've never seen a border like this. We've never seen an attack on an ally in Israel like that. We've never seen any of this. No, but Trump, he's a threat to democracy. Go ahead.
Interest aliens, meaning they are coming from countries that have potential national security or terror concerns, and they're supposed to get additional DHS vetting. We caught up with several guys from Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey.
Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, what could go wrong there? No, nothing. And we should invite Gazans in. Oh, yes, yes. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? Go ahead.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Why'd you come to Egypt? Why'd you come to America?
For a job.
For a job?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know it's illegal to cross the border like this, right?
Yeah.
You don't care?
Yes, I'm okay.
Hi, guys. Where are you guys from?
Egypt.
What country? Egypt?
Egypt.
Where are you from? What country?
I am from Turkey.
Turkey?
Yeah.
All Turkey?
Yeah. I love you.
Where are you from?
From Egypt.
Egypt.
Okay.
Egypt. And Harris, you heard that Jordanian man there tell me he's not here for asylum. He came here to work. He knows he did it illegally, and he doesn't care that he broke the law. There's not a fear of consequences.
They don't care. They broke the immigration law, and then they say the immigration law is broken. No, it's not. They're criminals. This administration is filled with criminals, from the top to the bottom. Look at the damage that's being done to the United States of America. We don't even know who these people are. Doesn't matter. You come from certain countries, you get special vetting. Not anymore. Not anymore. They don't even have the argument now about Central and South America. You heard what he said. We're not even seeing people from Central and South America. The vast majority that are coming from the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the continent of Africa. God knows where. God knows who they are. It doesn't matter. Because Joe Biden signed an executive order. He's going to fix this now. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. In the next hour, we will have Byron Donalds on because he's not only a fabulous patriot, but, of course, he's under attack by Politico. Why? Because he's a black conservative. It's just a matter of time until any black conservative of note is under attack by the Democrat white majority media. That's the truth. They don't attack black Democrats and leftists, well, maybe on a rare occasion, but Byron Donalds is a conservative. He is a star in the House of Representatives. He may be going further in his political career. Who knows? So he has to be attacked. I want Byron to come on. I want him to deal with this as he can very effectively, and I want to discuss a number of other issues with him, and plus me. We'll be right back.
Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. By the way, the Trump campaign put out a great ad I wanted you to hear about Biden's border crisis. Cut 3, go.
We have rescinded so many Trump immigration policies, it would take so much time to list them.
There have been more than 1 million migrant encounters since October 1st, when our fiscal year began. It is the earliest this milestone has ever been reached.
It's a mess that this administration created from day one.
Smugglers and cartels exploiting chaos at the border.
Agents are being removed from the line. They're having to process. They're having to do all the administrative work. And who is it that's, flourishing from this? It's the drug cartels.
Cartel gunmen stroll along the riverbank, armed with rifles. It's here where cartel gunmen have repeatedly been seen wandering through the brush after crossing into the U.S. illegally.
And it's not going to stop because this administration doesn't want it to stop.
This administration just does not care about the American people. They've shown that time and time again.
That is the U.S. side of the Rio Grande.
58 terrorists have crossed the southern border.
The entire world is showing up here at our doorstep. They're crossing illegally, and they are expecting to get released here into the United States. We are in the biggest crisis, border security crisis, that we've ever faced in the history of this country. Nobody has done worse on border security than President Biden. In all aspects of border security, he is clearly failing. He has no answers.
This is insane. The federal government has to wake up.
I know that 1,000 overwhelms the system. I cannot begin to imagine what 4,000 a day looks like.
Well, now you can see what 6, 7, 8, 9, and some days 10,000 look like. It's quite shocking. I want to read you this piece in Politico that I referenced earlier. Politico, Byron Donalds expresses nostalgia for the Jim Crow era when the quote-unquote the black family was together. Whenever I read something like this, I know that they completely ripped it out of context. And so you have to step back, understand that you're dealing with the American Al-Qaeda, the American Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, that's bad enough. You have Braxton Booker writing the piece out of Philadelphia. Representative Byron Donalds was on the defensive on Wednesday as Democrats attacked him for comments he'd made the night before praising black families under the era of racial segregation in America. At least Braxton Booker cites his source, right, Mr. Medusa? Democrats. Quote, during Jim Crow, the black family was together, unquote, Donald said during a black GOP outreach event in gentrifying part of Philadelphia on Tuesday. He meant a increasingly white part of Philadelphia. And criticized decades-old policies from former Presidents Dwight Eisenhower and Lyndon Johnson for promoting a culture of dependence. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people have always been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. The remarks prompted a blitz of attacks from Biden allies, including the top House Democrat on Wednesday. It has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow. Is that what he said, Mr. Medusa? Did he say black folks were better off during Jim Crow? He said the family was together. Now, he'll speak for himself. That was Hakeem Jeffries said in remarks on the House floor, listing other aspects of that era, from lynching to the suppression of the black vote. Gee, who was involved in lynching and the suppressing of the black vote back then? Democrats. Democrats. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Oh, I like that line. I like that line. But it's ridiculous. In a response video posted on X, Donald said the Biden campaign was gaslighting voters and that Jeffries was misrepresenting him. Okay, what did that say? I don't know. They don't quote it. The remarks, first reported by the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is a rag, Also touched on gender roles in the home. Quote, there's a difference between men and women anyway. No way. Men have been created by God to be conquerors, to be hunters. A black man in today's America is looking around and saying, how can I go hunt for my people and hunt for my family? One person in the crowd, mostly made up of self-identified black Republicans, shouted bingo to voice agreement with Donald's remarks. Can I slow down a second here? Does any of this come close to what Joe Biden has said about black people throughout his life, even relatively recently? No, it gets a complete pass. Complete. The Biden campaign signaled they believe Trump's overtures to black voters will be undermined by messaging missteps. Messaging missteps? How about real historical steps that Biden took to screw black individuals? Like integration. Donald Trump spent his adult life and then his presidency undermining the progress of black communities that they fought so hard for, so it actually tracks that his campaign's black outreach is going to a white neighborhood. I don't even know what they're saying. And promoting to take America back to Jim Crow. Trump is not promoting to take America back to Jim Crow. What the hell does that mean? What it means is the Democrats cannot conceive of losing black votes, and they will do whatever they can to stereotype, to racialize, to create as much hysteria as they possibly can. They have nothing else. They have lawfare and racism. That's all they've got. And I ask people, whatever race, background, whatever religion, look in the mirror. Be honest with yourselves. You're being played. Look what's happening to the country. And I'm tired of people who say, I can't stand by, but that Trump, he's going to cause a civil war. That Trump, he's going to... Oh, shut the hell up. He was president for 4 years. It's Biden who threw in with the racists and the segregation. It's Biden today who throws in with the anti-Semites. It's Biden who throws in with the Marxists. It's Biden who has the border wide open. It's destroying our communities, especially inner city communities. And the black voter outreach event Tuesday, Donalds appeared at the event alongside Wesley Hunt, Republican Texas, who was black, and former NBC sports broadcaster Michelle Tafoya. We've seen her, of course. They attacked her for being a conservative. This is the thing that scares me, is they convinced people that they're not strong enough to do it on their own, she said, pausing for a beat before continuing. You got to suckle from the government teat, and then you are attached for life. That's true. We know that's true. That's what the Democrat Party and Marxists are all about. That's why Joe Biden is screaming at the top of his lungs at the graduating males at the all-black college, Morgan State, where he changes his dialect, where he goes on that, you know, you may not be able to succeed. You have it harder than everybody else, going on, rather than talking up opportunities in the United States of America, rather than pointing to people who came from nothing and made it great, particularly in the black community. He says none of it. None of it. We need our men back, said Rosalind Ross Williams, who works with the anti-tax group Americans for Prosperity. Many of us have bought the lies. Now, these are all black people that I'm talking about. They are talking about now, that I'm identifying now, because they're not supporting Biden, the Democrat Party, the socialist economic agenda, the Marxist cultural agenda. These are people who think for themselves, so they must be attacked. They must be caricatured. Trump and his surrogates are making a push on black voter outreach. His polling suggests larger shares of black voters are winnable for the GOP this cycle. They point to a poll. Donalds also said black women may be turned off by Democrats' positions on transgender policies. Black women are looking at their sons and saying, now, wait a minute. You'll tell me that my young son can become a girl? Nope. He's explaining that the black culture is traditionally quite conservative. that black churches mean a hell of a lot in the black community. And he's right. He's 100% right. But the Al Jazeera media in America, they twist things. They turn things. He never said he's for Jim Crow. You know, it's a point that Thomas Sowell has been making for decades. That the black family was much more cohesive. That there were more black families with a two-parent household than not. And this applies to white families too. But nonetheless, we're talking about black families. Thomas Sowell has made the point that before Franklin Roosevelt, you didn't have this unraveling and destruction of the black family and the black community. He's not saying Jim Crow is good. He didn't say that. What he's saying is the Marxist, leftist ideology, the Democrats went from eugenics, slavery, segregation, to now Marxism, Islamism, that the Democrat Party has been destroying the black family. It's a black event, and he's saying the Democrat Party has been destroying the black family. He's right. Their policies have been destroying the black family. He's right. And there's many scholars, and there's a ton of research behind it. As I said, Thomas Sowell, but he's not the only one. He's one of the greats, but there's others. You're not allowed to speak freely. You are not allowed to challenge this. You are not allowed. This is why they try to destroy Clarence Thomas. This is why they try to destroy Byron Donalds. This is why Michael Steele flipped parties. He realized, I'll be embraced by the left. Right, Michael? You're welcome to call in anytime, of course. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Well, NBC News, consider the source. Trump's VP search enters a new phase. Now, may I ask you a question? Why would Trump and his people provide that information to NBC News? First of all, they may not have. Secondly, if they did, they're putting feelers out. They're looking for reactions. Third, it might be disinformation. Who knows? But we'll play along just for the fun of it. By Henry J. Gomez, Matt Dixon, Jonathan Allen, and Daisha Burns. You wonder why these media platforms are going broke? Why do you need 4 reporters to write this, Mr. Producer? I write a whole damn book by myself. Donald Trump's search for a running mate is intensifying as the former president awaits sentencing on felony charges. Now, what does that have to do with the selection of a vice president? Nothing. Vice presidential contenders recently received vetting materials. 5 sources familiar with the process told NBC News. Yeah, right. 5 sources. And sometimes those sources are the people who receive it because they want to promote themselves. I've always found that to be a bad idea. Trump's search, according to one source. Oh, I thought they had 5 sources, Mr. Producer. Is heavily concentrated on 4 top prospects, so they have 1 unnamed source. That's the America Al Jazeera. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. I don't think we've ever talked to him, have we, Rich? Did he want to come on the other week? He did? Reach out whenever? Senator Marco Rubio, Florida. He never wants to come on, does he, Rich? I don't know why he has a burr up his ass. I never did anything to him, but it doesn't matter. So be it. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. We like him. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. We like him, too. Another source described a three-way competition involving Burgum, Rubio, and Vance. Really? Might be true, might be crap. It's unclear, though, who has been asked to provide vetting details that could rule them in or out. Now, obviously, in the case of Rubio, he'd have to leave the state, and word has it that he's prepared to move out of the state to be vice president. Boy, that takes an ego. Just saying. Burgum, who's been spending more time with Trump in recent weeks, is among those who have received a request, said one source familiar with the ask. You used to have two sources in the media. Now, they come out and they say they have five sources, but they don't have five sources. They have five sources for five different things. That is, you used to have two sources for one thing. Not anymore. The Al Jazeera American press, they just, throw it to the wind. Let's see. Advisors to Burgum and other would-be running mates declined or did not respond to requests for comment this week. Sources plugged into conversations about the search caution that Trump is working from a fluid short list that at times includes more than a half dozen names. Additions, subtractions, and the emergence of dark horse candidates remain possible. So we actually don't know anything, do we, Rich? Wow, what an article. Hey, and it took 4 reporters. Trump and his advisors have kept a close hold on the search, which until recently had been relatively quiet. As the presumptive GOP nominee stood trial, that's twice, in a piece about vice presidents. I'll move on. Trump has said in interviews that a decision on his running mate will likely come closer to the convention, which opens July 15 in Milwaukee. In 2016, he announced Mike Pence as his running mate, just days before that year's nominating convention in Cleveland. So you learned absolutely not a damn thing. We already knew these were among several people under consideration. By the way, we're going to have great Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Professor Stephen Calabrese, one of the masterminds challenging the appointment of Jack Smith, and helped prepare the brief that 2 former attorneys general, Meese and Mulcahy, signed on to, and a discussion about how Donald Trump can get directly to the Supreme Court. He has a slightly different view, but we both agree that the paths are available. And our second guest is Elise Stefanik, who damn well ought to be on that list. She's fantastic. And then on Sunday, the great governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and America's wise man, Victor Davis Hanson. That's a hell of a lineup, folks, you have to admit. So if you're not sure where you'll be this weekend, you should set your DVRs right now, 8 p.m. Eastern, or whatever time it is out there for you. On Saturday, same exact time on Sunday. 2 very, very important shows. Calabrese and Stefanik Saturday, DeSantis, Hanson on Sunday. And of course, moi. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
You know, America, as you know, I was born in Philadelphia. I was raised in and around Philadelphia. Not till I became a young man did I leave for other parts of the country. I went to Temple University and went to Temple Law School, Philadelphia. And my friend Byron Donalds went to Philadelphia the other day, and he now knows how lousy and rotten the Philadelphia Inquirer is. And they create this whisper down the lane, and now anytime you have a conservative who is black, a conservative who is Hispanic, a conservative who is Jewish, they have to be character assassinated. And now it's Byron Donalds' turn, because Byron Donalds is a superstar. Byron Donalds may, in fact, run for a higher office. I don't know. I'm not going to put him on the spot. That's not the point of this interview. Byron Donalds, what do you want to say to the Philadelphia Inquirer and Politico? The idea that you would support segregation and so forth when you're trying to explain the black family, things that Thomas Sowell has explained, things that so many other economists have explained about what's happened to the black family. since the onset of this massive socialist economic system. What do you want to say to them?
Well, what I want to say to the media and even to the Democrats at the Biden campaign is don't twist my words. Don't lie about what I said. Use my full words. Put the whole clip out. I've already done that on my social media. And, Mark, you know I'm not one to plug, but everybody go to @ByronDonalds on X.
Let's link to that. Hold on, Ron, just a second. Let's link to that. Let's get it on all the platforms now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because that's okay, because you can see exactly what I said and what I was talking about. Mark, we were in Philadelphia reaching out to black voters in Philadelphia ahead of the presidential election, trying to build those relationships, which I believe are critical, not just for black voters in our country, but for all voters in our country who typically don't vote Republican. And so what came up in the conversation was, what about the black family? And so everybody was talking about what happened in their families, and I talked about mine. I grew up in a single-parent household, and so what I talked about was how important it is with the reformation of black families in America today, and that is in part why you're starting to see more black people lean conservatively and vote conservatively. And the only thing I did was I said, well, look, if you go back to during the Jim Crow era, black families were intact. And during that time period, you have more black people voting conservatively because that is the fact. That is exactly what happened. But when the Great Society with Lyndon Johnson and all their programs came in part what it did is it destroyed the black family in America. That is a fact. So now today I find that you have the Washington Post and Politico and I guess the DNC and the CBC and all the alphabet soups. They're all now saying how I embrace Jim Crow. That's the craziest thing I ever heard. And so all I'm saying is use my words. Don't lie. Don't gaslight. If you want to debate my words, let's debate them. But don't try to tell the American people something that is a falsehood, that is a lie. Mark, I'm not built like that. I came into politics, and look, I'll fight hard. We'll debate anything. But if you try to lie on me and lie about what I said, that's when the gloves come off. I'm not going to stand for it, and that's why I'm standing up to him.
Amen. Well, you know, Byron, about how long ago was it, Rich? 6 months ago, I was called an anti-Semite. So you, a black man, support, they say, Jim Crow. Me, a Jewish man, I'm an anti-Semite. This is how sick these bastards are, no?
No, it's absolutely correct. They are sick because they don't have an argument. They don't have a point because their policies suck. Mark, you know it. I know it. America knows how terrible these Biden policies, these radical, which are really the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren policies. These policies suck and they're terrible. Everybody knows it. And because you have black people in this country, specifically black men, leaning towards supporting Donald Trump in the 2024 election, now they're trying to twist anything that could be said to say that you support Jim Crow or you support racism. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's a lie. But I'm not going to go and explain what I said. All I'm going to tell them is use my words. Don't twist. Don't dissemble. Don't read into the context of what you think I said. Go look at what I said and report it fairly and appropriately.
I call them now Al Jazeera media. They supported Hamas, they support Iran, they hate Israel. They're really state-run media for the Democrats. That's what they are. You don't even have a fair shot at explaining your view, which is why Byron is saying, folks, go to the link, listen to what I said. And Byron, this is why the media are dying. If it wasn't for these multi-billionaires on the left, you know, for the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN, they'd all be going under. Because the American people don't believe in them. They don't read them. They don't watch them. CNN has no viewers. MSNBC, same thing. New York Times numbers are way down. Washington Post can't get people to read because people have had enough of this, right?
Absolutely. Look, we are in a time in America where we already know the media is against the conservative common sense mindset that America truly needs in order to thrive and to succeed. And so they're in the tank for the radical left. The radical left is destroying every institution in America. And I think I said it the other day after the verdict came out with President Trump, that crazy verdict in Lower Manhattan, is that I'm not going to be lectured by the radical left and Joe Biden. They're the ones who are destroying the pillars of our republic. They are the ones who are destroying democracy. If you have nothing to be afraid of, then let people's words stand for themselves. Let people speak freely without you trying to suppress their speech or limit their speech. But the left can't play that game because they understand that if people are freely allowed to express themselves and their thoughts are heard in full context, in full view, then they lose. They don't have an argument. They know how to lie, they know how to spread fear, and they know how to suppress you. And that's what the battle is in 2024, Mark. And that's why I'm so excited, that there are a lot of Americans who typically aren't Republicans are supporting President Trump, and they're supporting Republicans this November.
Don't you think it's interesting that the DNC, which is the party of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow, the party of Joe Biden, who was a racist segregationist early in his Senate career, embraced the senators who was supported by the Ku Klux Klan in the South. Don't you think it's a sickening irony that they're trying to paint you that way, a black man, and there you have Joe Biden, who has a real history, DNA and fingerprints all over it. Isn't that pretty pathetic?
No, it's sickening, especially considering, and you just said it, Mark, that Jim Crow, that was ushered in by the Democrat Party. That was not the Republican Party. The Democrat Party is the ones that push forward Jim Crow laws in the South to suppress black people in this country. That's their history. That's their party. I'm a conservative. That's never been our history. That is not our party. We're about the liberty of all people. We're about the expansion, the growth of all people. We want people to thrive and succeed, not be under despotism. That's always been the radical left, because they know if you want to just talk about the issues without all of the gaslighting and the politics and the innuendo and the race baiting, when you get to the actual issues, you realize that their policies make no sense at all. And that's why people are beginning to reject them. So I guess it's my turn to be in the battlefield, but Mark, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to be intimidated. These people aren't going to intimidate me. I know Merrick Garland said that yesterday, but he sounded so weak, and he was dissembling in the Judiciary Committee. Me, personally, I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not backing down. I know what I said. I know what I didn't say. I stand on what I said. And if they want to twist my words, go ahead and twist them, but I'm going to tell the truth.
By the way, I know Byron Donalds. He's a friend of the family. He's a very good, decent man. Wonderful family. And by the way, he's big as hell. So I don't think I'd want to mess with him either. Now, Byron, what's going on with Matt Gaetz and you? Anything interesting there?
No, Matt and I are good, man. I think, Matt, he's working hard in Congress. I got to give Matt credit. I watched his questioning of Merrick Garland yesterday. I told him on the floor today when I saw him, like, he did a great job, dealing with Merrick Garland, because he's just trying to spin everything. But Matt and I are fine. Look, we're right now, we're focused on President Trump, helping him come back to the White House, because we got to get our country on track.
Mm-hmm. And if Biden is reelected, the country's in dire, dire straits. It's going to be very difficult to get our justice system back, to get our citizenry and our border back, to get our economy back. It is a grave threat to our country. I don't know how Israel's even going to survive it, to be perfectly honest with you. Even in Ukraine, we send all that money, and then he says, but you can't attack the Russians. Well, that's an endless war. That's an impossible war, and those people are dying for nothing if that's the case. He really is an arsonist who goes around and burns things down, isn't he?
It's 100% correct. Listen, 4 more years of Joe Biden, you're going to see more instability around the globe. You're going to see more conflicts around the globe, because our adversaries will know there is no strength in America, specifically in the White House. Tony Blinken, this guy is the very worst Secretary of State. Nuts. I never thought I would ever say this in my life, but man, I kind of wish we had Neville Chamberlain. I really do, Mark, because at least there might be some sense. Tony Blinken is the absolute worst. The man is rooting for our enemies. He's a disaster. You have the people that are... Can
I just comment on that real fast?
Oh, go ahead.
Just so the screwy left doesn't script. What I take you to say is, Chamberlain was an appeaser. Tony Blinken's actually funding our enemy.
Yes, 100% correct. That is correct. Neville Chamberlain was an appeaser. Tony Blinken is back-channeling to the Iranians and to everybody else while he gives these phony speeches and these phony statements to CNN and to NBC.
Amen.
That's what's happened in America. And you have so many of these other agency hacks who are going way outside the bounds of the law that Congress has passed at various points in American history. And then to top it all off, you have a president who has defied the Supreme Court, who has weaponized agencies against the American people, who has watched his Department of Justice, who has salivated his Department of Justice to hurry up and bring charges against his political rival. This stuff is crazy. It is nuts. Our country cannot survive another 4 years, another 4 minutes of Joe Biden. He must be defeated.
If people want to help you, Byron, where do they go?
Just go to ByronDonalds.com. The links are up. I just appreciate, you and your support, Marcus. Appreciate everybody's support. Look, I will tell you, and I was just with one of my colleagues, Andy Ogles, here in Tennessee, and I was with him. And Andy Ogles, he has a tough race. If you can, please support Andy. Go to Andy's website. I don't have it committed to memory, and support Andy. But Andy Ogles, guys like that, they are people who go to Washington to do the right thing. They're not going up there just to get along with everybody, to make sure the press likes them, or to go to all the parties. Half the time, Mark, we're eating ham and cheese sandwiches or getting some takeout before we go to sleep. But we're in Washington to do the right thing. And when you do that, that's when the radical left comes at you. That's when the media comes at you. That's when they try to twist every little word. But it takes men and women of conviction who are going to look at the press, say, you're not going to intimidate me. They double down and they continue to move forward to do the right thing for this country.
I think it's very simple. They accuse you, a black man, a patriot, of embracing Jim Crow, and the man who actually embraced Jim Crow, they're backing him and funding him and promoting him for president of the United States. You're right. We don't need to take their crap. The hell with it. Byron Donalds, we're all for you 100%. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Be well. It's a good guy, man. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know what? I'm very proud to be associated with Fox News. I know some people get upset about that, but I want you to think about this. Harris Faulkner, who I don't know, who I think was promoting one of her books on this program some time ago. She's doing this special from Vietnam. Her father fought in Vietnam, was a great patriot. And I watch the promotions and I say, look how she loves her father. Look what she learned from her father. She goes back to Vietnam, tracing his steps. Tracing his steps. Look at Martha McCallum. Look where she is. She's in Normandy. Talking to some of the few surviving World War II vets who fought there. And it brings tears to your eyes. Look at Brett Baer, who writes these very patriotic books about history. Look at Pete Hegseth, a real war veteran, patriot. And he writes this fantastic book, The War on the Warriors. And there's many more. Dana Perino. Judge Jeanine. I mean, I'm not keeping people out purposely. It's just, but it's a totally different atmosphere and spirit than any other network. It just is. Plus me, of course. There aren't many networks that have me. Are there, Mr. Producer? I want to salute all you heroes out there. Be well till tomorrow, and I'll see you then. God bless.